Wednesday night Bible study with the Trinity Church of Christ. We're in Ruth Chapter 3 tonight. Before we get started in that, I have a few announcements I want to go over with you and share with you. First of all, remember that the Civic Center at 9:30 a.m. We're going to have classes for all ages. Brenda and the ladies are working really hard to get that squared away, and I think that's going to be a very good addition for us, and we're looking forward to that. That will be at 9:30 on Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, and then at 10:30 we'll have our morning worship. So there'll be the teenage class. They're going to be Ken's going to be teaching the adult class, and then there's going to be children's classes that they're spreading out. It's going to be a good day for us. We look forward to that. On some not so good news for you, it looks like the building is not going to be back and refurbished and back in shape in time for Vacation Bible School. So what Ken and I have talked about and talked to some of the folks that are involved in teaching it, we're going to suspend the Vacation Bible School right now. We'll not come back and hopefully be able to have it sometime in the fall. We hope to be able to perhaps have it on a Saturday or one day or something like that. Ken's working on those, and we appreciate your patience with that. We are not very happy about that. When Ken and I were talking about it and sent me the text to confirm it, it had a frowny face with it, and certainly I concur with that. I'll give you some of those that are sick or having problems right now. Margie Newby, many of you heard last night that Margie had a fall while she was going to attend to, and Bill was outside to get him in, and Jackie was there and came back and got her, and they helped her get up. They got her and took her to the emergency room. She has a big old goose egg on her head, and she's got a banged up knee. She's going to get checked out hopefully in the next day or two and find out about that. But it could have been much worse. We're thankful that she is well as she is, and we look forward to her continuing to improve. Snooki, as we mentioned, is in room 215 to 1600 New England. Send it to care of Margie and Bill there, and they'll make sure that she gets to it. Randall Harris is still in room 9115 in Erlanger. You can send him a card to his home if you'd like to, and Starla will see that he gets it up there. Also, Ken Jenkins is undergoing his third radiation treatment today. Had it today. Tried to call him, hadn't got him yet. I'm going to try to call him again. Those things are going with him. Mitzi continues in hospice care. She has asked at this time that there be no visitors, and we certainly will honor that request and want her to hopefully recover and recoup as quickly as she can. Tonight we are in the much awaited and much anticipated getting to chapter 3 of Ruth, the book of Ruth. Now, we're going to see basically the big story is going to be that Ruth is going to basically propose marriage to Boaz. And in chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, we're going to see some things that are going to begin to unfold there. And you're going to see how clever that Naomi is as she lays out her plans for him. In the American Standard Version and in several other versions, it says, "Shall I not seek rest for thee?" Well, in the New King James and in most the ESV and most versions, it says, "Shall I not seek security for thee?" Moffat, in his translation, said that I must see you settled in life. And rest is used in the American Standard Version there is in this context. Naomi is determined to do everything in her power to find a husband for Ruth. And here she's going to reveal a very clever plan that she's got for finding that husband for her. It's interesting if you go back and you look in Ruth chapter 1, verses 8 and 9, right as Ruth is first coming back, 8 and 9 of chapter 1, she prays for a husband for Ruth. But here she's going to go beyond just prayer, and she's going to exert her energy and the things that she has to try and to bring that to pass. What can she do to make that happen? Someone said that divine and human actions work together in the achievement of God's purposes, and I believe that to be true, and not to wait passively for events to happen, but they must seize the initiative when the opportunity presents itself. You've heard me use the example, if you've been around Trenton very much, that God doesn't expect us to pray and then be like a little bird and just hold our mouths open and expect God, like Mother Bird, to drop food into our mouth. God is going to take care of us, but God also expects us to do what we can to provide. In fact, He's winnowing tonight in the threshing floor. If you go back and if you look in Isaiah chapter 41, verses 14 to 16, we can learn from that the harvest season usually ended with a celebration and something including the equivalent of a banquet. And Naomi knows that's going to happen tonight, and this story unfolds in chapter 3. Now, we're not told on and that the very night had come for that crucial and that celebration time on this occasion. But anyway, she knew what she was doing, and she saw the opportunity, and she took it. Now, one of the things we're going to learn in this chapter that we've talked about many times before, but especially we're going to read between the lines some here. And this is out of First Don, I guess here. I think it's pretty obvious, and I don't think this is really a special gift that Naomi and Boaz and Ruth had some interaction. This wheat and barley harvest has been going on for about 6 weeks, most scholars think. And now she's come to the point she's saying, Boaz, here's what I want you to do. Here's how this thing's going to work out. But she knew what she was doing in this as she sets this thing up for Ruth, and she's going to tell Ruth what to do. And she saw an opportunity, and she's going to take it. You know, when you see an opportunity, you see a chance, what we need to do is really that Naomi had proposed was full of risk and danger for both of them. Ruth, of course, was going to expose herself to the possibility of humiliation and rejection, or even the violation of her chastity, of her purity. But Naomi knew the character of Boaz, and he rested the whole scheme upon what she knew to be his honor and his integrity. The several other commentators I mentioned and read said that the popular mind in that time, threshing floors were associated with a lot of immoral activity. Things would go on that were not moral. But Ruth could be sent there by Naomi because Naomi trusted Boaz and she knew Ruth. Now, in verse 3, she says, therefore now wash yourself and anoint yourself and put on your best garment and go to the threshing floor. The raiment here, the garment she's talking to, is her best clothes, and the anointing is a reference to using perfumes. Now, although it's pretty clear Naomi did not expect Boaz to give in to the sensual lust of the circumstances. She also wisely knew that the physical desirability of Ruth would be something that would enhance the probability of getting a favorable response, from even referred to her being dressed as wedding garments. And then in verse 4, he says, then it shall be that when, first of all, he said, wait until the man finishes eating and drinking. And then it shall be in verse 4 that when he lies down, you shall notice the place where he lies down, and you shall go in and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do. Now, according to our purposes today, the part of Ruth and Naomi appears very objectionable. That's a moral standpoint that you would do. But it was not so when judged by the people of Israel at that time. By lying down at Boaz's feet, Ruth is going to present herself perhaps as a humble petitioner asking for protection. She's going in saying, I need your protection. Will you take me and protect me? And whatever, it was indeed a daring and a dangerous maneuver on the part of Boaz. Now, I feel like I ought to say something here, because some of the commentators you would read, Morris in his commentator and Moffat in his commentator in his translation, Moffat translated the passage to be uncover his waist. And Morris pointed out that his feet could have been used as a euphemism for even his external genitalia. Well, but I don't think that, with looking at the character of Naomi, she wasn't going to send her daughter-in-law down there, who she refers to as her daughter many times, down there to be taken advantage of morally. She wasn't going to send her down there to be one that, like a prostitute, would use sexual favors to get what she wanted. She was a moral woman. Both of them were. Naomi, all of that before she sent her daughter-in-law, her daughter now she refers to her, to lie down at the feet of Boaz. I think you're going to see that it really ties in well with verse 9, where when she laid down at the feet of Boaz, it symbolized her proposal of marriage, which is going to come just a few minutes later in verse 9. Drop down to verse 6, you're going to see Ruth's obedience, 6 through 13. Starting in verse 6, and so she went down to the threshing floor and did all according that her mother-in-law had instructed her. And after Boaz had eaten and drank, and his heart was cheerful, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. And she came softly, uncovering his feet, and lay down. Now, as you look at those verse there, it says she came softly. Now, the word softly here, that's translated, but it means quietly, so as not to be heard. In 1 Samuel chapter 24 and verse 4, the same word is used when David went in and cut off the edge of the robe of King Saul in the cave there. He went in softly, went in quietly. And then in verse 9, we drop down to, and she said, he wakes up and says, and who are you? You know, he sees a woman laying at his feet, and there are not a lot of light. And he just says, who are you? And he says to her, I'm Ruth, your maidservant. Take your maidservant under your wing, for you are a close relative. So now Naomi says, take your maidservant under your wing. Some of the versions say, spread your skirt over thy handmaiden. The American Standard Version says that, I believe. Ezekiel chapter 16 and verse 8. Now, Morris in his commentary says that This way of proposing marriages still exists among even some modern Arabs. So this is another example of how Naomi knew what was going on. Naomi had a plan. She knew what was going to happen here. And then it says the word skirt there is used the American Standard, English Standard, the New King James. It says, "Take me under your wing. Spread your wings over me, for you're a close relative." It's the same word that's translated wings in Boaz's prayer in chapter 2 and verse 12, where he speaks of Jehovah, under whose wings, Ruth, thou art come to take refuge. Now, the metaphor comes from the protection that a mother hen provides for her chicks. Perhaps this resemblance is that Boaz, in spreading his robe or his skirt over Ruth, is the answer, the implementation of Boaz's own, where God would spread his protection. And I couldn't help but think about, as I was preparing the lesson, read through about Luke chapter 13, where Jesus says, "O Jerusalem, how often would I have gathered you like a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but thou would not." Well, please take me in. I want you to gather me under your wings. I need your protection. I need what you can offer me. And then in verse 10, he says, "Blessed are you of the Lord, my daughter, for you have shown more kindness at the end than in the beginning." Now, in this verse, Boaz is going to suggest very clearly, not going to suggest, he's basically going to say that Ruth had enough chosen in marriage. She could have married for love. She could have married a poor fella. Or she could have married for money. She could have married a rich man. But instead, she chose a marriage that was going to benefit her family. He says this was the greater kindness done to Naomi than all the other wonderful things she had done for her mother-in-law. This doesn't mean that she didn't love Boaz. This didn't mean that she Boaz. But in verse 10, he says to her, "Inasmuch, and now, my daughter, do not, for you have shown more kindness in that you did not go after the young men, whether rich or poor." By this statement, Boaz kind of recognizes the attractiveness of Ruth. One of the first times we hear really Ruth being spoken of in how she looked. We're not told directly. She wasn't hard on the eyes. She's pretty easy to look at. But he says, in doing that, he said, you could have sought marriage among some of the young men, some of the personable young men, the handsome young men of Bethlehem. However, Ruth had chosen to do the thing that would, to which she married the son of Elimelech. She's going to preserve Elimelech's family. Now, the unselfishness of this is emphasized by the fact that tradition says, Hebrew tradition says, that he was 80 years old when he married Ruth. The Bible doesn't say that. You can take, maybe I should have put that in First Donald, but in also tradition also says that Ruth would have been, and they stage out about when she would have married and about the age should have been in her late 30s or early 40s. A little old for a 40-year-old to be married an 80-year-old, it seems. You see that it was unselfish on her part. Yes, she did love him. Yes, she was attracted to him. Yes, she did seem as a man that could help the family. And that's really what her main concern was. He was going to be the one that could help Elimelech, her family that she had married into. What a beautiful love it is by a daughter-in-law to care enough about her mother-in-law and about her mother-in-law's family to do that. says, now it is true that I am a close relative. Now, there are many things about this narrative that don't really fit in exactly to the teaching in regard to marriages that take place after the death of a husband. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 and 10 says nothing about a near kinsman. It emphasized that the deceased husband's brother is to marry the bereaved widow, of knowledge of the customs prevailing in Israel in this time of antiquity. When these ancient times, we don't know a lot about how marriage things went on. In fact, many of the details connected with this marriage are mentioned nowhere else in the Bible. So again, you kind of got to read between the lines and look at the great lessons you can learn. The great point in this remarkable narrative, this story, is that Ruth's purpose of providing an heir to her husband, Mahlon, and her mother-in-law, Naomi, on the highest level of priority. Now, she recognized that her own happiness was going to be secondary to that intention. And as you think about that model of selfless concern for the needs of others, you think about what Paul said about Jesus Christ himself in Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 through 11, that he looked not on his own needs. He thought about the things that mattered to you and to me. How wonderful an example it is of Ruth, of seeing a woman, seeing a human being who says, I'm going to love others more than I love myself. I'm reminded of the word agape, the unselfish love, the selfless love, putting her own happiness as secondary compared to taking care of the needs of her mother and of providing an heir for her and to keep the family name alive. What a good woman. Also reveals the absolute determination and the promise of Boaz to accept Ruth's proposal of marriage, provided, and this was the caveat, provided that only the nearest kinsman does not preempt him and take that privilege, exercise his privilege. Here we see a man committed to doing things the right way. We're going to see that in the 4th chapter. We get into that next week, that Boaz is going to do the right thing. And also we're going to see how that probably, if you read ahead and study getting ready for next week, you're probably going to be able to see how that you say, Boaz and Naomi and Ruth, they'd exchanged some information. There were some things going on there. And I don't think they were dating in the sense that we would consider dating. It appears most of their contacts were together in the field when Boaz would be eating with them and come to eat with information. And he's going to use that as he's committed, though, as he's already said, to doing this the right way. Well, now we're going to see what happens when the night comes to an end, the early morning begins, and Naomi reports her success to, Ruth reports her success to Naomi. In verse 14, so she lay at his feet until morning, and she arose before one could recognize one another. Do not let it be known that this woman came to the threshing floor. Now, this sounds like, when you first read it, it sounds like Boaz is giving a command to someone. But that's really not the case, because Annie said, in this case, the passage has the meaning of in Hebrew that he thought, or that he said to himself. Now, the reason for Boaz having this caution and thinking this thought is very clear. Nothing sinful had been done. There had been no immorality committed. There had been nothing done wrong. The presence of a woman on the threshing floor might have been misunderstood. Remember, we talked earlier about we're kind of known for being places of immorality and lascivious behavior. So he wanted to make sure that nothing that was done there had even the appearance of being wrong. Verse 15, it drops down. It says, and he said, bring the shawl that is on you and hold it. And when she held it, he measured out 6 ephahs of barley and laid it. Some of the versions, the American Standard Versions, one of them says he went into the city. I think that was an error by a scribe. I think he was meaning to write down she and wrote he. But let's start with he measured 6 ephahs of barley. Now, this may have been, he probably was sending that to Naomi in recognition of her responsibility for Ruth's actions. Don't really know. Maybe he was just being generous to her. That certainly would fit in his character. Perhaps his arrangements could be made for her to be married to him or to the nearest kinsman. He wanted to make sure she was taken care of because there was no gleaning anymore. 6 measures, 6 ephahs. Now, Barnes, in his commentary, believes the correct measure should be the seah, which is about 1/3 of an ephah. Now, if that's correct, that would mean that Ruth carried 2 ephahs of barley to Naomi. Now, a bushel of barley weighs 50.5 bushel or 6 seahs with 5 pounds. That's quite a heavy load. But the statement that Boaz laid it on her probably means, and certainly Moffat believes this, and Morris believes this, and it makes good sense. I might even put it in First Donald somewhere. That when he laid it on, it means he put it on her head. It was well known that women could carry great weights when properly balanced. Buckets of water and pitchers of water, they could do that. And says he went into the city. Again, the American Standard, some of the versions say he went into the city. I think that's very simply just a very simple scribal error. Just somebody was writing down it. We'd call it a typo today. He wrote down the wrong word. It should have been she, and he wrote down he. And then in verse 16, and when she came to her mother-in-law says, who art thou, my daughter, in the American Standard Version. The New King James says, is that you, my daughter? Some of the commentators I read said that meant that Naomi didn't recognize Ruth because it was still dark. We know she left in the darkness to get there. But when she calls her my daughter, all translations have called her my daughter. That doesn't make sense that it would fit there. I call you my daughter, but I don't know who you are. It'd be like me saying to Jamie, my wife, is that you? And then say, oh, Jamie, is that you? Oh, I didn't recognize you. Well, if I say, my wife, come in, how did you do? The cross-reference Bible has it this way, and I really like this translation. I think it probably fits in, and the RSV and Moffat render it the same way and said, my daughter, what hast thou wrought? What did you do? And I think that makes a lot of sense to me in fitting in to the rest of the chapter there and the context of the chapter. And now in the last 2 verses 18 and 19, or verses 17 and 18, he says this, these 6 ephahs of barley he gave me, for he said to me, do not go empty-handed to your mother-in-law, daughter, until you know how the matter will turn out. For the man will not rest until he's concluded the matter this day. Now there's the wisdom of, obviously you see a lot of wisdom on Naomi's part there, because she said, sit still until the matter's resolved. Naomi knew. She didn't think, she knew. Now, in First Donald, she probably had already talked to Boaz about what's going to happen, how it's going to come out. Bible does. It makes a lot of sense. She knew Boaz would not rest was settled. She gave some good advice. Sometimes we need that advice too. sit still, rest until the matter is settled. Sometimes we have to learn, we have to wait on God. We have to sit still, learn to sit still and wait until things happen. But all in all, chapter 3 starts off with a lot of stress, a lot of concern. Now, maybe Naomi knew what was going to happen, already did. As she knew the virtue and the virtuous life and lifestyle of Ruth, but there's a lot of concern about what's going to happen. What's Boaz going to do when Ruth goes in? Well, that turned out to be very, very good for both of them. At the end of the chapter, it must have been, as the dawn was breaking that morning, it must have been a very, very happy day for both Naomi and Ruth. Next week, we're going to get into chapter 4. And in chapter, some interesting things. We're going to see Boaz now, the key player. We're going to see Boaz become the main character, and you're going to see what a very wise and very seasoned negotiator, that I guess you call him a negotiator, that we're going to see that Boaz is. We're going to see how that he redeems Ruth, and you're going to get, there's some very, very interesting things at the end of the chapter. As you get to the end of the chapter and you get to the end of the book, I think ahead and get ready for chapter 4 next week. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm glad you're here. Remember, Sunday morning we are, and please spread the word. We are going Sunday morning to have Bible classes for all ages. It's going to be for the ladies have got it organized. Matt's going to have a place for his teens to meet. Ken will be teaching an adult class. It was just heartbreaking for us not to have a class for our young people, not to have a class for. We're going to start that. That'll be next week. Make sure that you're present there Sunday morning at 9:30. Spread the word. Invite others to be a part of that. Also on at 10:30, we'll have our morning worship service. I'm trying to get out and trying to find some guests to invite. I've tried to invite some guests this week. I hope you will too. So I hope that you'll get that done. And hey, thanks for being with us tonight. Hope you have a great, hope you'll sleep well, rest well, and Lord willing, we'll see you on tomorrow morning. Hey, tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock is a great time to be with us. Or you can always be with us certainly be with us on Sunday morning at 9:30 for Bible classes, 10:30 for worship at the Civic Center. Be at the Civic Center. Beautiful place. Thanks for being a part of that. If you get a chance, send a thank you note to Terry Powell. If you get a chance to do that, I'll get you the address for that, and I'll have that with me on Sunday. If you haven't done it yet, it'd be a great time to get it done. Or you can Terry in care of City Hall, and he'll get it. He'll know you appreciate what he did for us. Thank you very much. God bless you, and have a good and a wonderful, wonderful evening.